Welcome to the Center Step Racing Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Schuler. Thanks for listening, and boy, have we got a short but pretty crazy show for today. Obviously, a lot of Demolition Derby happening out in Daytona, and one crazy call changing the outcome of the Xfinity race, so we'll take a dive into that. First off, if you are looking to sponsor this podcast, send me an email, podcast@centerstepracing.com. You can be featured right here in the podcast in front of countless people taking a listen. So before we dive into the episode, let me run through the trivia questions from last week's episode. We'll run through those, and then I got a few prepared as we head on over to Kentucky Speedway. So, first question from last week. Who won the first July race at Daytona Beach? That was Red Byron back in 1949. And yes, that was on the beaches out of Daytona there. So, the second question I had, what is the fastest qualifying speed for a July Daytona race by the Cup Series? 203.519 miles an hour by Sterling Marlin in the 1986 Firecracker 400. So, pretty crazy. We, sometimes, can get close to those speeds when we're in a pack, but, obviously with these restrictor plates, we're not quite gonna see those speeds, probably anytime soon, but. Then, my last one, how many times has the Cup Series raced on Independence Day at Daytona? 31 times the Cup Series has visited the iconic oval at Daytona, and raced there on Independence Day on the 4th of July. And the last was in 2009. That's obviously when Tony Stewart won by spinning Kyle Busch out, entering the Tri-Oval. If you were on social media, you saw Fox Sports or NASCAR on Fox and NASCAR on NBC posting that video quite frequently, as that's one of the more favorited memories at Daytona with the July race. So as we're heading to Kentucky, here are my 3 questions. I'll post this on my Twitter handle as well. You can follow me on there at JSchuler, that's JSCHUOLER, or at Center Step Racing without the G. When was Kentucky Speedway opened? That is my first question for this round of trivia. When was Kentucky Speedway opened? And then the second question that I have, when did the Monster Energy Cup Series start racing at Kentucky Speedway? And my final question, who is the only driver to win starting from outside the top 10? Who is the only driver to win a Cup race starting outside the top 10? So I'll have those answers in next week's podcast. Be sure to take a listen and follow along as we continue on through the rest of this season. Congratulations again to Eric Jones and Kyle Larson. I know some of you are kind of wincing when I say that, and we'll obviously go into that. But obviously Eric Jones grabbing his first win. Awesome job out there. There's obviously a lot of social media buzz too about not having much of a pack to race against, but still sometimes it's not the fastest car that wins, but the smartest driver. And Eric Jones, I believe, handled a good balance of being lucky and being in the right place at the right time and being smart with his race, and got himself that win. So nice work for that 20-team bunch. Let me talk about the Xfinity race first. Obviously, if you saw what happened, you obviously have an opinion. So I'm going to post on my Twitter handle, at JSchuler, and I'm going to run a poll if you think NASCAR was fair with their call. Not if they were right or wrong, because I don't think that's the debate here. I don't think the debate is if NASCAR was right or wrong. I think the true debate lies in, was NASCAR fair with their call? And here's what I'm talking about. NASCAR's rule is very clear, cut and dry. And in fact, there were a couple videos and pictures posted from the drivers' meeting where they actually have a video for the drivers explaining all the situations. And they have this at every track. I saw the drivers meeting at Sonoma. I saw the drivers meeting at California. And if you've ever been to a drivers meeting, you know what I'm talking about. So they don't have someone standing up there on a podium talking about it and trying to explain it to the drivers. They actually have a video, a 3D graph. I don't know if they've teamed up with like iRacing or another computer program. But the purpose of that is not only to provide an audio example, but a very clear-cut visual example for the drivers. For example, when they can enter onto the track after exiting pit road, where the timing lines are, where they start scoring, where some of the timing loops are, different things like that. Well, one of those features in that video during the drivers' meeting was a very clear example explaining what NASCAR defines as below the yellow line. And basically, from a fan's point of view, here's what you're looking for. If NASCAR can no longer see a yellow line between the tire and the asphalt, they declare that person has gone over and under the yellow line. Okay, so if the tire is on the yellow line, that's fine. You are okay with that. As long as there is some form of yellow that can be seen between the asphalt below the apron of the track and that yellow line and the tire, if they can see all three of that, you are still fine. Obviously, Justin Haley, way below that, about half of his tire was on the asphalt off of the yellow paint. Okay? That, in NASCAR's rulebook, is very clear, cut and dry. He went below the yellow line, and instead, his penalty was actually be put at the tail end of the lead lap. So instead of holding your position and finishing in third, obviously Justin Haley went for the win, which, if you remember last week, he won the truck race. So this would have been a very career milestone for Haley to go out and win the truck race, then come right back the following week and win the Xfinity race. That would have been huge for him. So I don't blame Justin for making that move. I probably would have done the same thing, been above or below the yellow line, I don't know. But I would have definitely made that same move. I would have never settled for that third place that I was in. He had an outstanding run because the front two got together and slowed down. So he had the run and he had to make a move. Unfortunately, his move put him from third or fourth, potentially a potential finish position at least of third or fourth. And NASCAR's rule says you go at the tail end of the lead lap if you're caught doing that. And so he ends up finishing 18th. What a heartbreak. You sit there and think you just won the race, and NASCAR calls that you went below the yellow line, which it was clear. He went below the yellow line. But that brings me back to the point of my poll that I want to have for this week. It's not necessarily was NASCAR's call correct, because it was. According to their rulebook, it was correct, but was it fair? And that's what I want to know. Again, follow that on Twitter at JSchuler, SCHUOLER, and you'll find that poll there. Give me a follow as well. You'll get some more updates and different things like that, but I want to know if you guys think it was fair and see what your extra thoughts are. My thoughts are, I think NASCAR needs to eliminate that rule on the last lap. For a racer, you are going to give anything and everything you have to get that checkered flag. Granted, on a road course, if you try to cut a corner, I think, yeah, that's a penalty. You shouldn't be cutting corners. But I don't think Justin Haley's move was cutting a corner. He didn't put anybody else in jeopardy. And in all reality, you're sitting there, you are racing for a checkered flag. You are racing for a win. And as a racer myself, I think that if you make that kind of call, I don't think it's the right call. I don't think it's a fair call in the racer's etiquette world. You kind of diminish the checkered flag a little bit, or the value of it, by having that kind of rule in place on the last lap. So with that said, let's go to the Cup race real quick. Erik Jones obviously capturing his first career Cup win at a wild race in Daytona. Take a look at the title of my podcast, Demolition Derby in Daytona. There were a lot of guys who finished outside of the top 30 who are in the top 10 in points. So a crazy night race out at Daytona. But take a look at this top 10, because these are names that we don't get to talk about much. Eric Jones obviously grabbing the win, Truex in second. Then you have AJ Allmendinger, who had that huge disappointment out in Sonoma. Casey Kane with the Levine Family Racing Team bringing it home in fourth, and Chris Buescher grabbing his fourth career top 5 finish. There's your top 5. Here's your top 10. In 6th place was Ty Dillon. Ready for this? That was Ty Dillon's first career top 10 finish in the Monster Cup Series. In 7th, you have Matt DiBenedetto, who, by the way, also had a very strong run at the Daytona 500, and in fact led a few laps there, was running strong today, and obviously in that front pack, and had a chance for a good finish. So, great run by that team. Ryan Newman in 8th, Austin Dillon in 9th, and Alex Bowman in 10th. These are names we don't get to talk about much. Sometimes to get a good finish, you just have to finish. Whether that means you're dodging wrecks, or just taking care of your stuff, or honestly being lucky by being in the right place at the right time, that's what it takes at these restrictor plates. Again, like I told you guys in my last episode, this is a mind game race. This is all mental. Very minimal is physical. You have to be mentally aware of where everyone is at, what everyone is doing, and when something's going to take place. And you saw that all race long. And what you saw were wrecks being caused by people who were not mentally there. Sure, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was kind of thrown some blame for some of the wrecks. But if you look at how some of them even started, you actually have to go back almost half a lap to see how someone was trying to set themselves up for a pass incorrectly. And what happened was someone went for a block, and that other person wasn't aware that another car was there when he lifted and caused a wreck. So I don't necessarily put all the blame on Ricky Stenhouse Jr., although he was obviously the culprit of being there for a couple of those wrecks. But again, like I said, this is all a mental game. This is a mental race. But looking outside the top 10, a couple other guys got a great run as well. Jeffrey Earnhardt in 11th, almost grabbing his first career top 10. Brendan Gaughan in 12th. DJ Kennington in 13th. And JJ Yaley, for those of you who remember, drove for Joe Gibbs for a little bit, getting an 18th place finish overall. So good run for those guys who don't usually get a chance to get strong finishes like that. So awesome to see some names up there that we don't get to see very often. And on top of that too, here's another thing that kind of blows my mind. Your bubble drivers. Here are the last 4 in the points right now. Ryan Blaney's in 13th, Jimmy Johnson 14th, Chase Elliott 15th, and Alex Bowman 16th. Austin Dillon is in 18th in standings right now, overall, with a win. So you have to take that into consideration, where you have people outside of the top 16 or top 15 in this case, with a win. And if any of those drivers get a win that are not on the bubble, that are outside looking in, that's going to shuffle everything up. That means Chase Elliott's going to be the next one outside looking in. So these next few weeks are going to look pretty intense. You're going to see some of these guys pull off some crazy moves. You're going to see insane strategy calls, and you're going to see people roll the dice. So these next few weekends, next few rounds are going to be exciting to watch. So that's all I have. Like I said, a short podcast for this week, but let's go into overdrive. So my green flag, obviously take a look through through that top 10, and take a look actually at when their last top 10 finish was. You're going to see quite a few of those guys celebrating, even though they didn't get the checkered flag. So good run again for everyone that doesn't usually get to finish up there, and awesome to see some recognition and new faces out there as well. As we're coming around this last turn here, white flag is in the air. We're going to celebrate just one birthday this week, but Brendan Gaughan, happy birthday to you out there. And obviously Brendan Gaughan being one of the drivers getting a top 12 at Daytona, so great run as well. So happy early birthday. And as we come around the last turn for the checkered flag, what I'm looking forward in next weekend's race, we're heading out to Kentucky, and the Cup Series just doesn't have as much experience at this track. I think these drivers are obviously fantastic, and they pick up on this track very well. But with that said, we only have a few winners here overall. Not many people have found victory lane at this track. So it's going to be exciting to see, like I said, a combination of the bubble drivers as well as not having many former winners before at this track. So we could see potentially another first-time winner. At the very least, I think we could see a first-time Kentucky winner this upcoming weekend. Thanks for taking a listen. Follow me on Twitter as well. Take a follow on this podcast so you get alerted when new episodes come out. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week. Have a good one.